Ukulele Tales with John Atkins.
Yo ho ho, it's me, the ukulele teacher, or as I hope you're beginning to think of me, John Atkins. Welcome to the Christmas edition of Ukulele Tales. As ever, sponsored by Carla Brand Music, so if you're looking for a new uke for the new year, head to carlabrand.com/UkeTeacher and you'll get a 10% discount on anything on the Carla store just because you happen to listen to Ukulele Tales. Now, depending on where you are in the world, this should be reaching you more or less on Christmas Eve, which I'm hoping will become a bit of a tradition for the podcast. Now, I can't quite remember if last year's episode came out on Christmas Eve or not, but I was speaking a little while ago to my friend Ukulele from Uke Mullum in Australia, who told me that last year he waited until his family had gone to bed on Christmas Eve and then put on a pair of headphones and listened to an episode of the podcast late at night in the empty house as a little treat to himself. Now, I thought that was a really cool story, and I'd love for that to become a bit of a tradition. Not just for Stu, of course, but hopefully for the rest of you as well. Now, lots of my favourite podcasts and TV shows have special Christmas episodes, so I don't see why Ukulele Tales should be any different. So, with that in mind, a couple of days ago, I jumped on the phone with James Hill and his wife, Janelle, to chat about all things Christmas, including their terrific new Christmas album, The Midnight Clear, which came out a few weeks ago, and I'm sure will also become part of lots of new Yuletide traditions for lots of you listening. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already, as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, of course. Now, I'm sure you'll all be familiar with James and his wife, Anne, and it's always good to catch up with friends and family at this time of year, so it really was great to have a chat with them. Now, as ever, they were very generous with their time, and as ever, James is what I would describe as a deep thinker, and he really gave me plenty to ponder over during this festive period. Now, the first half of the interview, we talk all about the album, The Midnight Clear, which again is out right now on Apple Music, Spotify, all the usual places. But then in the second half of the chat, we'll talk a bit more about things like the creative processes involved in working with your spouse or significant other, the lengthy incubation period involved in lots of creative projects, and the lack of shared cultural experiences in today's society, and why that makes Christmas music so important. It's a really fun interview, and I did have a blast chatting with the pair, so I hope you'll enjoy it too. Now, unfortunately, because James and Anne weren't at home, we had to do the interview over the phone, and the audio quality isn't the best in the world, but I've cleaned it up to the best of my ability, and if you plop on a nice pair of headphones, it should still be very listenable. Now, I'll be back shortly to talk to you a bit more, but in the meantime, here's part one of my interview with James Hill and Janelle.
On the west coast of Canada, which is where we both grew up. Actually, we're sitting in Anne's mom's living room, and we just did a concert yesterday, like at the church where Anne grew up, and it's kind of a walk down memory lane right now.
But are you like on tour, or is this just a sort of one-off thing, or?
Yeah, so we are in the midst of our release tour for our brand new record, The Midnight Clear. And so we did an East Coast leg of that tour. And yesterday we started the West Coast leg. So we have 3 more shows coming up with full symphony orchestra next weekend. So we're pretty excited about that too.
That's amazing. Can I just ask, is that the West Coast and East Coast of Canada? Or are you sort of crossing the border at all? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is a Canadian tour this year. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Now, when did this came out? Was it a couple of weeks ago, your Christmas album?
Yeah, it was on
November 24th.
the end of November. We had a concert back home on the East Coast of Canada, which is kind of like we've started to do this annual concert in the town nearest to where we live, which is called Truro, Nova Scotia. And it's kind of the kickoff for us, and I think a lot of other people too. Just to say like, yep, it's okay to get into the Christmas spirit. It's okay to get into the holiday spirit. It's okay for it to snow from here on in. You know, once this concert happens, it's officially the season. And so we thought we would release the album on that day. It just made all the sense in the world.
And it's lovely, by the way. I was listening to it. Well, I've been listening to it the last couple of days. Actually, it's really something really, I don't know, really special. I wanted to ask you guys: is that something you've kind of wanted to do for a long time, or where did the idea for the Christmas album come from?
I blame your mom. You know, you have some people in your life who are just Christmas people.
Mm-hmm.
Like they look forward to Christmas. They collect Christmas things. They really get into the spirit of Christmas. And Anne's mom for us is that person in our lives. And so years ago, she sort of whispered the idea that, you know, it would be great if you guys would do a Christmas album. And we've been very gradually piecing it together. In fact, in our own hometown of, you know, a tiny little town in Nova Scotia, they have an annual food bank concert, right? I mean, that's kind of where some of these songs came from.
We had an invitation to play for this fundraising concert, and you know, it's like any musician, you just say yes to the gig. And then we were like, oh, wait, we actually don't know any Christmas arrangements. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we made some, and yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And then every year subsequent, we kind of did one or two other arrangements. So it has been a long time in the making, and it's fun to stand back and see the whole collection of tunes. So I would say like the first one off the record was the Il est né, Le Divin Enfant, and the I Saw Three Ships fiddle medley. It's like an instrumental.
Yeah.
And then the one that we finished with, like, you know, we almost had pressed the CD already, and we came up with this arrangement for Patapin, which is this beautiful old Burgundian carol. So yeah, it's been several years in the making, but it's really fun to see it all as one collection now.
It's funny how it started with a French carol and ended with a French carol.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to ask about Patapin actually, because I've never heard that song, or I'm not familiar with it at all. And I was wondering, are all the songs arrangements of Christmas songs, or are some of them sort of Hill Family originals?
Yeah,
that's a good question. There's two categories of tunes on this record. One is sort of the reinterpretation category, which is mostly Anne's department. It seems like every year in like early November, she sort of wakes up in a cold sweat and just has this arrangement, like this new interpretation of a very familiar carol done in a really interesting new way with a new twist. And that's sort of one category of what we have on the album. And then the other category is songs where we've taken a little piece of an old carol, usually like one line of the lyric, and we've sort of replanted that in the present and grown this sort of entirely new song around that old sort of inspiration. So that's another category that you have on the album. And throughout, you're just sort of mixing between those two ways of reinterpreting old traditions for modern ears.
Hey, can I take it from the way you described your mother-in-law, James, that you are not one of those Christmas people?
That's so funny. Well, I mean, I like Christmas. I mean, sure. Here's the thing. I mean, Anne grew up in the United Church of Canada. I grew up outside the United Church of Canada. And I still had Christmas traditions. We still celebrated Christmas, and but I've had to find my own way to reconciling, you know, the Christmas spirit with my own experience, you know, and so I think everybody has to, in our culture at least, has to find their way into this season. And for me, I guess I would say it's always been through music. And although I would say that's always been my way to understand almost everything in the world, Christmas being no different. And so this is kind of a record of my way of understanding this season and what it means from the perspective of somebody who grew up outside the church. So, whereas with Anne, that's it's a different story. You have different traditions, and we're coming to a place where we both meet.
And Anne, are you more of a Christmas person then, or more of a Christmas lover? Would you say?
I do love Christmas. Yeah. I think there is something magical about it that I love. And for us out east, there's often snow on the ground, which to me is just such a beautiful sight. And yeah, it's fun. Now that we have a son of our own, it's fun to pass certain traditions on and make new traditions. And I love that creative aspect of Christmas time as well.
Well, I was going to ask about your son, because if you're on tour at the moment, are you going to be away for Christmas? When are you coming back?
Yeah, so we're traveling with him and we will be on the West Coast for Christmas. So yeah, it's an interesting endeavor to try and bring some of the traditions that we have in Nova Scotia here, and yet here is where all of my family is. So my parents and my siblings and their kids. So there will be a lot of family time, but it will be a little bit different than what we're used to in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. Oh, but you will be with family. I was kind of worried for a second you'll be spending, Christmas Day in a hotel room or something.
Oh no, luckily not. No.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. That's a relief
Although
then. Yeah.
our son has been known to celebrate birthdays in hotel
Yeah, I
rooms.
think his
Oh, yeah.
first birthday was during the LA Youth Fest in the hotel room. We had like a muffin to
Oh,
celebrate.
man.
With a candle on
It was
top.
a candle, yeah.
No, it was good. It was fun.
Poor kid. Poor
Yeah.
kid, I think.
It was sweet.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember.
How?
But it's interesting. You mentioned snow on the ground, and that being a symbol sort of Christmas. I know a lot of people celebrate Christmas and they don't have snow on the ground, but the seasons definitely do influence the way you feel and the way you sort of read into the metaphors and the imagery around it, and just the idea of the winter, the bleak midwinter, with all its coldness and sort of really the dormant kind of nature of the season, sort of leading up to the rebirth in the spring. There's something that is kind of dark and magical about this time of year, and I think if you listen to the album, I think it reflects that. When I stand back from the album now and I listen to it, there is a kind of there's sort of like a dark, sparkling quality to it. It sounds like a kind of a paradox, but it's not just a happy, happy, joy, joy record. It's not just like a hooray for everything record. There is a sort of no, there's
Complexity.
maybe a complexity or a conflicted or slightly sort of like muted celebration that I don't know. I can't really explain it exactly, but I think it kind of puts into music some of the things that we can't put into words in terms of the way we feel at this time of the year, but also the way that we feel about Christmas traditions in general as we try to make a bridge from sort of past to Christmas present, and what do these traditions mean to us now? What do these melodies mean to us now? What do these words mean to us now? I think when we took on this project, we didn't realize that that's what we were doing is bridging the traditions of the past and the messages of the past and trying to bring them into our lives in a more authentic way that reflects our feelings and our experiences around this time of year. I think I you know in some in many places I think the album succeeds at that. I'm sort of reviewing our own record now, but I think at its best, I think that's what it does, and certainly that's what we were striving for.
Yeah, I think it is a dark album musically, but not necessarily bleak. But I know what you mean. It's sort of allegorical, I suppose. But and yet it is a ukulele album. So
Yeah,
was there ever a thought of maybe
that's
just
right.
ditching the uke in some way, or?
Well, I would never ditch the uke. I mean, come
Well,
on.
that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
But it's funny because it doesn't like I don't I don't even really think of it as being a uke record, and yet on every song except that one instrumental,
Mm-hmm.
there, uke is all the way through the mix on every song, and yet it has a, I don't know, there's a melancholy, I guess, to it. But the thing is with the uke, I've always loved melancholy songs on the uke. I think that it creates kind of a counterweight to the melancholy feel of a song. Um, for a long time, Marianne Brogan on the west coast of the States in Portland, she ran an evening with her ensemble called, I think it was called the Sad Songs Contest, and they would all get up there and play the saddest songs that they knew on the ukulele. And there was something, it's like it just counterbalanced it out, and it was a fun night, but it was also sort of a catharsis. And I know that's one of the many gifts of the ukulele, that it can do that. It sort of brings light into the darkness just by its very nature. And I think that's what's happening to some extent on this album.
Well, and I would just add to that James has really explored the outer edges of timbre of the ukulele as well. So, he's not just playing his tenor all the time. There's some baritone in there, there's some pedals, there's some delay, there's just other textures and colors that to me just bring a whole new meaning and a whole new range of colors and timbres with the ukulele.
So how do you get the ukulele balanced with a whole orchestra? Because that's what it is, isn't it? There's a ukulele on sort of one part, and there's a whole string section at least, or orchestra behind it. How did you kind of figure out how that would work?
Well, doing that in the studio is one thing.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. But you guys are doing this in what, churches and stuff when you're performing live, or?
Yeah, and we're doing it in
Well,
concert halls.
yeah, like performance halls. Yeah.
Coming up next weekend, we're going to be playing with a full symphony orchestra for 3 shows in 3 different cities. There's no question, it's a tricky one, and you have to. And it can't just be solved by technology. You can't just turn it up to 11 and just hope that everything's going to work out. There has to be. I think it puts you on edge in the best possible way. You're really relying on the other people in the room to balance themselves and to really have big ears and listen. When you've got a conductor who's standing, 5 feet from the soloist, but then 35 feet back to the percussion section, and the percussion section can't hear the soloist as well as you might like, and then you're trying to get the percussion section to like groove,
Yeah.
with and swing, with the performance. Everybody has to rely on each other in this sort of almost telepathic kind of zero latency kind of way to make the music go. It's being an ukulele player, I've always felt like I was driving a moped. Like you can make quick turns, you can accelerate, you can slow down, you can do whatever. When we're together as a duo, we have so much flexibility in terms of on the fly decisions. When you're working with an orchestra, not only in terms of volume, but just in terms of timing and on the spot decision making, it's like driving an 18-wheeler. I mean, if you want to make a turn, you better be thinking about that turn, a minute or two before it happens, because otherwise you'll flip over. It's not going to be good. So it's a different way of thinking for us, but it's also, it's been an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and I think we also worked with a good friend of ours, Antonio Delgado, on the orchestral arrangements, and he did a beautiful job. So that now I'm talking about the live show. So the arrangements on the record we did, and there's mixing and there's things to do to make sure that the parts that you want to come out. But for the live show, yeah, Tony did a beautiful job of orchestrating it, and part of the job of an orchestrator is making sure that all the parts can come out where they need to come out.
Yeah.
Yes, you sort of orchestrating dynamics. So if you don't want it to be loud, just make sure that not everybody's playing. If you want to be loud, it's everybody in the pool, and so you do a lot of that dynamic balancing, hopefully before you even get to the first rehearsal. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Fingers crossed.
And if you guys are playing in different venues, is it a different orchestra every night as well, or?
Thankfully, the orchestra is on tour with us.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They hire a bus to move the orchestra around, and we might actually drive separately just because we have our son in tow, and we need the flexibility to get him back maybe to the hotel quicker than the other musicians who might want to hang out and have beer and fried chicken after the show. I don't know what they want to do, but we probably need to get right back to the hotel, so we might be separate. But it's going to be quite a entourage. I'm quite curious to see how it all works.
Okay, we'll be back with James and Anne in a moment, but I just wanted to remind you that if you'd like to help support the podcast, as this is an incredibly labour-intensive project for me, please check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/UkeTeacher. Just sign up at any level and you'll get early access to each of the episodes, lots of bonus content from several of the interviews as well, and you'll occasionally get the chance to do things like ask questions to guests and get the scoop first on who's going to be on the show. And hey, if this is the first episode you've ever checked out, by the way, be sure to have a whiz through the archives, as I really have spoken to some of the top names in the ukulele world. Jake Shimabukuro, Cynthia Lynn, Bagiti Kamalu, Victoria Vox, and in fact, James Hill himself spoke to me for over an hour in the first ever episode, so why not go back and have a listen to that one as well? Really, there are some great names to listen out for, so have a lot of fun this holidays going back and checking out the archives of Ukulele Tales. Talking of which, who would you like to hear me chat to in the new year? Drop me a message to UkeTeacher at grabyouruke.com with ideas for future guests, or indeed any thoughts about the podcast, and I will do my best to get your favourites on the show. And yes, I do reply to every single message that I receive. Eventually. By the way, do you remember last January we did a special episode of Ukulele Tales all about your goals and New Year's resolutions for 2023? Well, it's January again in just a few short days. So, time to start thinking about your resolutions for 2024. And if you have any, let me know. I'd also really love to hear about how you got on with the goals you set yourself for 2023. Did you succeed? Are you well on your way? Did you give up? Don't worry if you did. January is a great time to start all over again. Now, I'll be talking about this more in the new year, of course, but one listener, Petra Horsten of Holland, set themselves the goal of performing in the Dutch Ukulele Day. And a few weeks back, she sent me an email with a photo attached to say that she had achieved this goal. So congratulations to Petra, and I'd love to hear from the rest of you about how you've got on. So do be sure to send me a message either on Facebook, Instagram, or of course, email UkeTeacher at grabyouruke.com. Right now, though, let's get back to part 2 of my conversation with James Hill and Anne Janelle. Are you guys kind of fans of the Christmas album as a concept? Like weirdly, a lot of my favourite bands, even ones you wouldn't really expect it, have sort of put out special Christmas records or EPs or live shows or whatever. In fact, the one I was thinking about when I first heard the first song on your album, Joy to the World, was a bit of a random one, but the Crash Test Dummies did a Christmas album about, I think it must be nearly 20 years ago now, weirdly, but which I really love. And that's got a kind of a dark feel to it as well. But I was just wondering, well, firstly, are you fans of the Christmas album as a concept? And secondly, do you like Crash Test Dummies? Is my second less good question, I think.
Well, I mean, for me,
I Crash Test Dummies.
Yes,
actually, they're on tour right now.
Oh, really?
With Carlton Stone, but they're probably touring that Christmas record, and I haven't heard it, John. So I'm gonna dig it up after this interview.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to check it out. It's kind of dark.
Kind of imagine it.
Yeah,
I bet it would be.
Yeah, that's great.
But I think what's interesting from a musical point of view about Christmas is that music. I guess music is kind of the language of Christmas in a way, and people's musical tastes change at Christmas. Like, for example, everybody likes jazz at Christmas for like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Everybody listens to jazz, and then they go back listening to whatever they were listening to before. But it's kind of like it's kind of like people have this Christmas personality when it comes to their music, um, and often we have these sort of touchstone albums that stay with us our entire lives, that are Christmas albums that bring back memories that we only listen to, once a year. So I'm a fan of that for sure. I'm a fan of having a touchstone that, even now when I listen to certain albums, I can, put myself back in another time, and the smells of mom's baking, and the smell of the Christmas tree at my childhood home, and those things come back to me through the music. And I think a lot of people feel that way, which is one reason why music is sort of the language of Christmas. But I think our greatest ambition for this album is that it would become part of people's traditions, that would become part of their lives in a meaningful way. I've never I don't think I've really ever recorded an album, or even necessarily tried to record an album, that would go well in the background of somebody's life. I think, typically when you make an album, you're trying to make the album the focus and say, "Hey, look at these songs," or "Look at this, look what I can do." Or, a Christmas album is different. A Christmas album should integrate itself into somebody's life and not necessarily be the focus all the time. And that's an interesting and different, musical challenge, and hopefully it's one that we were able to accomplish with this record.
When I was growing up, the album was still an album,
Mm-hmm.
and we listened in those ways. Our favorite Christmas time record was the Roger Whittaker Christmas album. So that's the one, when James talks about walking down memory lane. We just recently got that one on vinyl, so we play that in the kitchen at home for the second generation. But I think that it's an interesting proposition to be a band, and then to be a band making a Christmas record. And it's an interesting decision to make, I think. And sometimes people do it, for non-musical reasons as well. And that has a certain feel about it. And sometimes, yeah, it's just another aspect of expression, another way to access different types of music for bands. And you hear all these cool covers, and even original songs. So I mean, I do love Christmas music, and I think for me it's been, yeah, this mixture of nostalgia, but then also an opportunity to hear artists stretching out and doing things that they might not otherwise do.
But also, there are vanishingly small numbers of songs these days that we all have in common.
Yeah, it's true.
With the when you get this sort of breakup of the media landscape, and you get the real influence of, like, playlist culture, there aren't that many songs that we all share anymore. I mean, and I think that's only, gotten more fragmented over time. And then Christmas rolls around, and it's like, okay, like it or not, you don't have to love all these songs, but, um, we do share
It's a
these
common
songs.
language.
There is a commonality there that you might not get during the rest of the year, and that has an effect. It brings people together at its best. It brings people together under the same banner of melody and music, in a way that we may not experience as ukulele players. We are familiar with that because when you go to a jam session, there often are some common songs, whether it's jambalaya or wagon wheel or something, like,
Mm-hmm.
we are in an insulated community where we do experience common songs. But for people who are outside that community, I think Christmas is one of those times where they get to feel that bond through music with other people, and that's special. We don't get that at any other time of year except your birthday. There you go. There's
Right.
one song.
Yeah.
There's one
Yeah.
time when we all get to sing together and we know the words to the song. But otherwise, Christmas, from a musical point of view, is still a very special little island in the course of the year.
So, what led to you guys making another album together? The first, I think, in what, nearly 10 years, is it?
Oh boy.
Well, with original stuff, I mean, our latest record was Many a Moon, but that was live
kind of acoustic versions.
records. Yeah. When was the last one?
I always lose track.
Was it True
Love Don't Weep?
True Love Don't Weep. Yeah, that was a long time. That was like 2009.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the duo record it just made sense for this project because both of us had something to say about it. Oftentimes, so I have my solo project, and actually I just released a new solo record this fall, and James has his solo project, and he's about to release a solo record in February. But the thing about the duo album is that it really is a collaboration, and it really is basically when both of us have songs that we're coming to the table with.
We both had something to say about this.
Yeah.
And they were different things, but they were complementary. And that's sort of the beginning.
What usually happens.
Yeah.
We have different things to say about it, but
that's right.
It's complementary.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume the answer is yes, but do you guys kind of enjoy sort of working together?
Well, I think the answer is mostly. Like there's always little moments in the studio where you just like butt heads and, well, I want it to go up there in the melody, and well, I want it to go down there in the melody, or, there's always little moments where you disagree about details. But I mean, overall, it's great. I mean, it's magical having that, common purpose and sort of, I guess it would be like couples who have a hobby that they can share, like
who curl together.
They do curling, or they play bridge together, or they go mountain climbing or something, but for us it just happens to be our livelihood.
Oh, my answer is yes. And I think it's better than curling together because we're actually creating something together. And creating anything is a challenge. Not only are you trying to wrestle something ephemeral into some kind of concrete existence, but it's also, there's many decisions to be made. And both James and I come from different musical backgrounds. We have different tastes. We have, certain things in common, but a lot of things in contrast as well. But to me, that's what makes it interesting. It would be awfully boring if we disagreed with each other all the time. And it was like, okay, I want to do this. Great, let's do that. So I think there is a fruitful place where we butt heads, as James says. But I also think that it's a wonderful thing to create with someone. And because James and I know each other so well, we've also grown into each other artistically and musically. When we first met, I was going to be a classical cellist in an orchestra. That was my path, or that's what I thought. And it was only after being together for a while and that duo album and all of the decisions that led me to a different way, a different place, a different collaboration with James that then ultimately meant that we were creating together and growing together musically. So, and James, well, we were chatting the other day with another friend, and James, you were talking about us in performance, because the creative side is different, but then there's also bringing it onto the stage, right?
Yeah, I mean, the feeling that you have on stage especially when it's just the two of us, it's kind of like total reliance on the other person. I mean, it's like, it sort of feels like the two of you versus the world, like you only have each other to rely on, and it's a pressure situation. And you rely on one another. You have almost a telepathic, unspoken language. One look from Anne, and I usually know what she means or what she wants me to do, or there's always that look where it's like, that one where I can't remember what lyric is coming next, and I give you that eyeball, and you'll maybe like start the next lyric just a tiny bit before so that I can see the vowel that's coming, and then you just help each other out in ways that the audience will kind of never know. And that's a really it's a special connection, and I think that putting yourself in those often uncomfortable places where you only have each other to rely on. It's sort of like, I can imagine how it must feel to be like do an escape room or something.
Mm.
And you can only have each other to get out of this, thing. And that's a little bit like what performance can feel like sometimes. And when you overcome that together, of course, it just makes you stronger, as a couple. There's also the other thing, like, when we're at home, like, and you try to make a meal, you're getting your son out the door to hockey practice or whatever, but you're always thinking about what you've been doing in the studio that day. And there's a kind of musicians get a well-deserved reputation as being kind of spaced out, kind of head in the clouds kind of thing. Because it's not that you're spaced out, you're thinking about that one little lick that you want to perfect, or that lyric that you can't find a rhyme for, and your brain is often sort of occupied with this creative sort of background noise. And if you don't have a partner who understands that that's partly what you're thinking about, it can be very hard. And I don't know that from direct experience, but I know that from talking to other friends. And the fact that we have a common project and that we're both in that place of, hey, what about this rhyme for that? In the middle of lunch or something. Hey, what about this rhyme for this? Or hey, we should reach out to that person and see if they want to play the album on the radio. Your brain's always sort of spinning on that project, and if you can understand each other on that level, it's a lot better than one person being stuck in that netherworld and the other person wondering why you just forgot to pick up the eggs and milk because you were thinking about rhymes. So that's a practical side of things that I don't take for granted. It's cool.
When you guys work together, is there an element of sort of having to put your individual projects on the back burner for a while?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're juggling a lot of things, and always there's just different times where different projects will come to the fore, and other things have to take a back seat for sure. But I just love that we have multiple ways of engaging and multiple outlets for our creativity. That's the benefit, is to have that wide array that we can change gears or shift into something. If something's not working, then work on something else.
Well, things are always going from one burner to another. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
true.
it might seem from the outside that you just start a project and you sort of see it through and then it's over. But like,
It's very nonlinear.
in a very nonlinear process, as you know, John, and like, some things they'll be on the front burner for a couple of months, and then they'll go onto the back burner for like 2 years, and then they'll come back into focus. And I actually really like that way of working. I think it might drive some people completely up the wall, but thankfully, Anne, I think, also works in a similar way, where you sort of you work in sort of fits and starts, and things come into the foreground and then retreat into the background, and you've always got this kind of very dynamic to-do list, I guess you could say. And the fact that anything gets done is kind of a minor miracle. But I think we both work in that very nonlinear way. And so it makes sense that, like, hey, this is the focus right now because this is what we're both waking up in the morning thinking about. So that needs to be where our energy goes.
Yeah, and I think also in the creative process, it's really important to have an incubation period. And so those times when the thing is so-called on the back burner, actually, there's a whole bunch of activity going on bubbling under the surface that sometimes we're not even aware of. But then we go back to a project, and it's better, or there's some problem that we've solved in the meantime, or whatever. So I love having space to reflect, and space where it's not just like go 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 do all the time.
That's exactly what you said to me about your Billie Jean thing, James, kind of the incubation
Yeah, that's
period.
right, actually.
But it was a
Yeah.
10-year incubation period, I think, in that case, right?
That's right. And that happens. I mean, that is happening all the time. Sometimes on that 10-year time span, sometimes you have to leave it for a week and come back to it. But that's definitely seems to be the way that things actually happen. It's not necessarily the way you would tell people that they actually happen, because it's very, I think, off-putting, or
It's
not.
not very glamorous.
No, it's not very glamorous. If you're trying to teach students, for example, how to write a song, you would probably choose to present it in a more linear way, because that's the way people can absorb the information. And yet, it's not really how it works, but it's very hard to actually represent the way that things actually work, because that's not the way people necessarily absorb information. So, as a teacher, I'm sure you can, relate to that. and
Yeah.
and as a teacher myself, the juggling act is, how much truth do I tell, and how much do I have to put this onto a grid so that it can be absorbed in a somewhat logical way, even if it's a very illogical thing in reality. My dad actually is working on a book. I don't know if he'll listen to this podcast, but if he does, hi, Dad. And he's been working on this book for, I don't know, years and years now. And he is still working on the book. And he has a friend who often will ask him about his progress on the book. And the friend is a mathematician, a retired mathematician. And the friend will often ask my dad, what percentage of your book have you finished? And this question drives my dad completely nuts, because you can't really say,
when you're in the middle of it.
When we're in the middle of the process. Is it 75% done? Is it 80% done? And and the mathematician friend has a little bit of a tough time understanding why you can't say what percentage of the project is finished.
Yeah.
It's just a difference of perspective.
So let's talk about 2023, which is about a week away from finishing. Have you guys had a good year? Has anything sort of stood out for you as being particularly positive?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been a great year. I can't remember what happened.
Right. Okay.
But it's been a great year.
Yeah, it's been an amazing year for us, actually. I feel like we're finally there are musical projects and albums that have come to see the light, that, speaking of incubation period, and with the help of COVID, there was a long period where we weren't really releasing things or touring. And in the spring, we were able to launch our brand new band, which is Champagne Weather, and we did a tour supporting that. So that was years in the making. It's super exciting to have that finally coming out into the world. And then this fall, as I was saying, I released my latest solo record, which, again, I mean, I've been writing for at least a couple of years, and then of course this Christmas album with the culmination of us playing with the full symphony orchestra. It's like I'm a pinch myself moment, having grown up in orchestra, and then all of a sudden now we're soloists with this orchestra. So yeah, I think it's been amazing.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been kind of like all those things, plus it's been kind of the year of UKEDs. That whole project has really come to fruition, and finishing the UKEDs album, and having the first UKEDs gathering in person, in Santa Fe back in October, and that's been an incredible sort of arc to that project, and not just the music, but also the community building and everything that's happened around that. The band has really become the album, and the album sort of became the band.
Yeah.
And so that for me, when I look back on 2023, that's a big part of it.
Well, we'll speak a lot more about that on an upcoming episode in a couple of months when that comes out. But perhaps you could answer one question about it. Is there going to be a UKEDs 2, do you think?
That is a great question. Well, I hope so. I think it would be a shame to come this far and to not be able to jump into a new process with that band. Like, I just can't imagine that we're not going to be able to do another project together, whether it's a full album, whether it's a single, whether it's an EP of 5 or 6 songs. I don't have a crystal ball, and who knows what tomorrow brings. Yeah. But all things being equal, I think there will be another UKEDs installment.
A Christmas record, maybe?
That would be fun.
That would be awesome. The whole choir.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I wish you both a very Merry Christmas, and hopefully we'll speak to you again in the new year.
Absolutely,
Thanks, John.
John. Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Okay, many thanks again to James and Anne for the great Christmas convo, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. I'll be back in a few short weeks with a special New Year's edition, so be sure to send me your goals and resolutions for 2024, and of course, let me know how you got on with your goals for 2023. One of my goals was to teach myself the piano, or at least start learning it, so I bought one about a month back, and well, I've been really enjoying it, I have to say. Anyway, I've been rambling on for way too long, so if you're listening to this around midnight, then you probably want to get off to bed and get ready for Santa to come. So, just time to say quickly, thanks again to Carla for sponsoring the show, and as ever, head to carlabrand.com/UkeTeacher for a 10% discount on any of their wonderful ukuleles. Now, until next time, I love you all, and I wish you a Merry Christmas.